Good morning. So today the idea is to talk about situations where we see that the God is for us, that the odds are actually in our favor. So you'll see there's no orders of readings in your orders of service. It's just talking about stories where we see how God works in our lives. I was talking to a guy not long ago who was frustrated with himself. He's a young man, and he says, he's got problems with his temper. He's angry, and he says, I'm frustrated, but at the same time, my dad was this way, my grandfather was this way. I'm guessing my great-grandfather was this way too. We've always just had a short fuse, and he finds it very frustrating. And just kind of feels like, the odds just aren't for me. The odds are not in my favor for this to change. It's just something that's in my family. And, as long as we start thinking that way, that the odds are against us, that's what's going to happen. You're going to get stuck where you are. But I really try to put out there that, look, the Lord tries to show us throughout the Scripture that He is really, really powerful, and that we do ourselves a great injustice when we limit His power in our mind. When we don't allow Him the opportunity to do something great in our lives. Because the odds might be against you, but if the Lord is for you, then that's all you need. I mean, you look at the stories, He parts the Red Seas, He turns waters into wine, He gives sight to the blind. I mean, all these things happen where He turns negative situations around. So if God is for you, the odds are for you. It's really that simple. You don't have to go through life thinking it's not going to happen to me, it's not going to happen to me. If you go through life thinking that God's on your side, you can know that something good will come out. And that's what should be playing on our mind all the time, that whatever challenges I have, they're either there for me to learn from or that God's going to deliver me from them. It's really, really pretty simple. We get into circumstances where we say, God, well, why me? Well, no, I think sometimes we just need to say, not why you, just be patient. Be patient and know that something good can come out of it. One of the stories we know where this happens is the story of Gideon. He uses this story to show up in Gideon's life. The story is relatively simple. You've probably all heard it before. There's the Midianites and two other armies are coming against the Israelites. Gideon sends out word, says, hey, can somebody come out? We need soldiers come out and fight. And 32,000 warriors show up. At this point, the odds were in Gideon's favor. He had multiples more than the enemies were against him. Gideon's probably feeling pretty good about this. All right, I got 32,000 fighting men. We got this, no problem. Probably liked those odds. But then God says to him, well, wait a second. You've got too many men. Too many men. So he says, if you win against the Midianites, you're going to think that you had this victory. So I'll tell you what I want you to do is send home anybody who's afraid. Anybody's afraid, just send them home. So 22,000 men go home. Gideon probably did not like those odds. He probably was going, wait a second, this was really good a few minutes ago. Well, Lord, why did you intervene here and change the odds? The Lord comes to him again and says, you still have too many. We need to whittle this down. You're going to think you won the battle. I want you to know that I won the battle. So he has him go get a drink out of the water and whittles it down to 300 men. And it goes from 32,000 to 300, and the odds in Gideon's mind are definitely moving against him. The odds are not in his favor anymore. But the Lord sends them out 300 out. They blow their trumpets. They make a lot of racket. They have their torches. And the enemies are all confused. The enemies are all confused. And the Israelites don't even have to lift a finger. They don't have to lift a finger. And their enemies are defeated. God was setting Gideon up for a big victory, but he just didn't realize it. And that's one of these lessons we're supposed to pick up on, is that sometimes when the odds, they are against you and the obstacles get bigger, they're more powerful, we're not supposed to be worried about it. We're supposed to say, okay, well, this is clearly a setup for something else. The odds are actually in our favor when we've got God on our side. You might feel like an underdog, but you and God, that's a majority. I mean, that's it. That's all you need. You don't need to have everybody on your side. You just need to have God on your side. You don't have to have support and encouragement of everybody around you. If you've got God, that's it. That's it. Yeah, that's a winning combination right there. And as the Gideon story finishes off, other cities, other leaders said, we don't want to attack Israel anymore because we saw, not what Gideon did, they say, we saw what your God did to the Midianites. They saw what your God did. It's a different fear to fear somebody else's God than to fear their commander. Like, look, we're not even going to mess with you guys. We get reports in our life that say this isn't going well. The finances don't go well, the medical report doesn't go well, your kid's not behaving or whatever. You have all these different reports we can get in life where things say it's not very good, that you're not going to make it, this isn't going to turn out well. But sometimes these things are just a temporary lull, a downward trajectory before God steps in and says, all right, I'm going to make this change in your life. And when this change happens, you're going to see that it wasn't by your doing this was fixed. This was God who did it. We have the story of Moses and Pharaoh. God causes Pharaoh's heart to harden. Why? So that he could bring great glory to him at the expense of the Egyptians. Moses is told to Pharaoh, let my people go. But nope, Pharaoh says, nope, it's not going to happen. He's setting up the odds to be against Israel. After that first meeting, Moses goes and complains to God. He says, wait a second, you sent me to go there and do all these miracles, but Pharaoh has only made things worse. You're not a very good God. You've only made things worse. Now we got to make bricks and we don't have straw. Moses was unimpressed. Pharaoh's heart hardened. God says, hang in there. Hang in there. It's going to be okay. We may not see the end result in our radar. God's radar says, look, it's going to be okay. We've got to stop complaining about why things don't work out and say, look, when we're facing these big giants, we just got to realize that they look big, but God wins the battles. The odds are against us so that God can bring a big victory for us. There's the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Similar kind of story, right? What does the king want? He wants them to worship foreign gods. All right? They won't bow down to that golden idol. King gets so upset about it. What does he do? He says, I want to throw him into a fiery furnace, but not just an ordinary fiery furnace. We're going to make this fiery furnace 7 times hotter. It's going to be really, really, really hot. It's so hot that when the king's servants get near it, the king's servants burn up before they even get in the furnace. That's how hot. It's really, really hot. Sounds like the odds are going against the boys, doesn't it? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego go, oh boy, this doesn't sound good. 7 times hotter. God knows it doesn't matter how hot it is. It doesn't matter what the odds are. I'm going to protect them no matter how hot it gets. So they go in there, and the angel comes in, protects them. They come back out, and they don't even smell of the smoke. And the king says, what? He says, praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Praise be to the God. He gets it. The odds were stacked against them. Only God could have saved him from this. He says, you guys worship the true God. Just like with Gideon, takes him down from 32,000 men to 300. Just like Moses against the biggest nation, there are these big obstacles, and our job in those situations when the odds start to go against us is to say, all right, I'm not going to panic. not going to fall apart. God is perhaps just using this as an opportunity to show himself in my life. And when this is done, not only am I going to know that God's on my side, but everybody around me who's going to see this change is going to know that God is on my side. I think it was in 2008, there was a book that came out called Proof of Heaven. I imagine a number of you have heard of it, but it's written by a doctor named Eben Alexander, and this guy was a brain surgeon. And in the story is, he gets this infection, and he's dead. He's brain dead, of all things. And he stays brain dead for a while. It's not like he's brain dead for 2 minutes. He stays on these machines for days, and they keep trying to revive him, and they say, but, if we revive him, he comes back, he's just going to be a vegetable because he's been brain dead for days. Sure enough, he comes back. He doesn't come back as a vegetable. He comes back fully functional. It takes him a little bit of time to get back, but he comes back, and he's fully healthy and writes this book about what he has seen on the other side. He says, I have seen heaven, and I'm proving to you that this is not a figment or a hallucination of my brain, because my brain was dead. We have all the charts, we have all the medical evidence to show the brain was dead. Therefore, what I saw could not be a function of my brain making things up under a stressful circumstance. God could have chosen to heal the good doctor very early on. He could have chosen to heal him when he first got sick, when he first got in the hospital, before he got brain dead. There's all these places along the way that God could have chosen to heal this guy. But he heals them when the odds are way against him, when there's no odds of success. But he does it anyway so that he can make a point. The doctor can make the point of, look, this wasn't a figment of my brain, and God can make the point of, look, this is all very, very real, and God can do small miracles still today in people's lives. When this is done, Eben Alexander isn't just a testimony by his book, but he's a walking, living testimony to what God can do. People are going to look out at him and see the things that God can do in our life. We have a story like this in the New Testament where Mary and Martha sent word to their friend Jesus saying that their brother Lazarus was dying. Jesus was in a different city, and they thought that he would come right away and pray for Lazarus. They'd seen Jesus heal people before. This wasn't a new phenomenon. All right, this is your friend. This is your buddy. Come and help him. But he doesn't. It just says Jesus waited in the city. He didn't go anywhere. Lazarus passes away. He dies. Jesus still doesn't show up. Mary and Martha are probably going, well, where is he? Why is he taking so long? He waits 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. And the 4th day, Jesus finally shows up. They're wondering, why has it taken so long? They say to him, Jesus, if you had been here, if you had just showed up when we asked you to, Lazarus would still be alive. The odds weren't very good when Lazarus was sick. They didn't have good medical care back then. But now that he's been dead for 4 days, the odds are pretty well impossible. He's wrapped up in all his death clothes. He's in the tomb. He's smelling bad. You probably know the story. Jesus goes to the tomb and he speaks him back to life. And when he does, Lazarus wakes up. Sometimes God waits until the odds are 0 to make the miracle occur. You're ready to bury the dream, to forget about the relationship. You don't see a way. But God doesn't care about the odds. Mary and Martha were praying for a healing, but God gave them a resurrection. What you want to give up on? Well, maybe God's trying to do a resurrection in your life. The odds may not be for you, but if God is, that's all that matters. We got to make sure that we don't give up before God gives up. He's working behind the scenes trying to do things for us. But what I learned in the study of this story is that the Sadducees, who were Jesus' greatest critics, they were firm believers that 3 days after the person had died, the soul has left the body. There's nothing left. That's why it's believed Jesus waited 4 days. So that even the critics couldn't say anything. No, you think 3 days the soul is gone? At 3 days there's no chance? Fine, we're going to wait 4. And I'm going to bring Lazarus back on the 4th day. And that way even you guys can't say anything other than this is a miracle that God has done. Like Eben Alexander, Lazarus became a walking, living testimony. You can imagine back 2,000 years ago, Lazarus walking around and people going, "That's the guy who's supposed to be dead. There he is. That's the one." And the legend of Jesus grows because everywhere he walks, "Oh yeah, that's the guy. He's still here. Look at him. He was dead 4 days. He wasn't just a little bit dead. He was very dead. His body stunk. He was wrapped up in the clothes. Come on. Really dead." The odds were not in his favor. God doesn't care about the odds. God doesn't care about the odds. I'll finish up with this little story, and this is a true story, as I like to tell true stories. This is a story about a man who grew up in a very dysfunctional environment. Father wasn't around. Mother had this rotating door of boyfriends. She bounced between the psychiatric ward and jail, and all sorts of violence and abuse at home. And at the age of 13, the mother takes this boy to a bus stop and leaves him there as she takes off with a boyfriend. So her and the boyfriend go to the bus stop, they get on the bus, leave the 13-year-old behind, see you, goodbye, have a good life. So for years, this young boy was in and out of foster homes, detention centers. He says he slept in abandoned buildings, in the woods, any place he could find. He would steal food to survive, and you'd think he would never make anything out of his life. All the odds were against him. And it wasn't his fault. He'd done nothing wrong. Not really. But when he was in the 7th grade, he met a school counselor, and her name was Cindy, and she could tell this young boy was troubled. And she was trying to work with him, but after about 7 months or so, he got transferred to a different school, and the story goes that she prayed for this boy to come back to her school so she could watch after him. Well, after about 2 years, beginning of 9th grade, here comes this young boy walking through the doors, and this counselor, Cindy, was right there waiting for him. He's like, nobody had ever been looking for me my entire life. His life was so dysfunctional that this woman would drive 45 minutes to pick him up and bring him to school. So she's going out, getting him, bringing him back, and she just thought that encouragement would do so much for this boy. Well, one summer, he's mowing the lawn of an elderly couple, and they learned a bit about his story, and they opened up their house and invited this young boy to come live with them. While he's living with them, they discover this kid's got a talent for music. He's good at singing, he's good at writing it. And so he starts entering into like community shows and fairs and any sort of musical event he can. He goes and performs. And this elderly couple are sitting there in the front row with their Bibles in hand, cheering him on and hoping for the best. Well, turns out in 2008, his song, "Do You Believe Me Now?" hit #1 on the country charts. He uses his music, his country music, for a platform to raise awareness about foster care and to help other kids in the same situation. the odds were against him. The odds were very much against him. But God uses it not only his performance to bring Jimmy Wayne out of poverty, but now Jimmy Wayne sees that, no, this is God who acted in my life, and I'm going to keep passing on the blessings forward. When things look bad, sometimes it's just an opportunity for God to show up and do something in our lives. The fire might be 7 times hotter. You might lose 31,700 men of your 32,000 men. You know, the Pharaoh's heart might get harder. All these things can go wrong, and the dream can even die, just like Lazarus. God's saying that the odds just don't matter. If I'm with you, that's all you need. Amen.